Hi, this is Vickum, the founder of Santani Wellness Resort in Sri Lanka. I'll be chatting with Renae about human sustainability on her fantastic YouTube channel and the future of luxury wellness travel.
Now, Vickum, I have been to Santani. So how would you describe it to someone who's never been there?
That's the interesting one because you've been there and you're describing it as something that you have never experienced. And that was the whole idea, like from Time magazine saying it's one of the 100 greatest places in the world, to Forbes selecting it as one of the most unusual hotels in the world, which was only 25. The whole idea was to create something completely new, and there was opportunity to create something new because in the wellness space, I think most of the wellness resorts or anything to do with wellness were creating a solution without much understanding of the problem, because there is a problem, and because of that problem, there's a huge demand for wellness in various forms. So people just scramble together different things and say, kind of put it out, say this is wellness, without really understanding the issue. I'll get into the details what that issue is. I mean, that's where the whole human sustainability concept comes in. But we, I think, really understood it, and we created something completely different, and it is different. So there's nothing like this. And what we say is it's not about even an experience from a travel point of view. What we say is it's about creating a feeling at the end of the day. So everything is designed and delivered to create a certain level of feeling in a guest. And that's what you felt when you were there, and something that you never experienced.
So talk me through Santani, given what you're saying, what happens when someone comes in? I know because I've been, how do you address the issues that you're talking about for your guests at Santani?
Simple. As I said, two things. The mental part, we actively help them and give them a toolkit to manage the input process and output process. Physically also, we give them a toolkit and help them to manage the input process and the output. So in this situation, when you help them to get rid of the stuff that's kind of accumulating in the body physically, you are taking away the root causes of diseases. And when the root causes of the diseases are taken away, you don't have to worry about these things that pulling you down. You can focus on getting up to speed. Same way mentally, when you're not cluttered and there's clarity in your thinking, you have a better chance of getting up to speed. So we essentially give you guidance, actually work on you, and then also give some guidance or toolkits for you to take away so that you can manage these two.
In fact, you're reminding me that it was a number of years ago that I was there. There were a couple of women there who were ill, who were recovering from cancer and things like that at Santani.
Yeah. It's very simple because, as I said, it's a survival of the fittest issue.
Wow. Survival of the fittest. Is that where we're at? Gee, that's scary. That's scary.
Survival of the fittest is the universal truth. That's what evolution was all about. Yeah. But the only difference is up to this point that survival of the fittest, or the fittest part, was defined as physical fitness. Yeah. But now fit means it's not just physical, it's physical, mental, and spiritual.
And tell me, how does sustainability fit in? Because it's, Santani is it's built sustainably. You have sustainable practices. I mean, it's in the middle of, do you call it a forest, the tropical jungle? I mean, it's an incredible location. So how does sustainability fit in?
So essentially what I said is about sustainability of humans. If we don't address this, humans are not sustainable. This is an unsustainable situation for humans. If we don't something about it, we will fall off the face of the earth, right? So that's where the whole idea of human sustainability comes from. So we are essentially helping humans to be sustainable and manage this kind of a dichotomy and get up to speed and get into a more sustainable or balanced path that we want to take along with the changes in the world. So when we talk of human sustainability, we can't let the traditional idea of sustainability stay back. All of that is part of our system, right? So it naturally lends downwards towards the traditional idea of sustainability. So I mean, we actually came up with this whole idea of human sustainability because the idea of the current idea of the sustainability, as you were referring to it just now, focuses on everything else other than humans. We talk of protecting the trees, we talk of protecting the oceans, the coral reefs, everything else other than the humans. And that becomes a burden for humans because we are supposed to now take care of the earth. But when we are in a situation like this, when we are struggling to be sustainable, adding another burden is not going to work.
And I hear you, and you're saying that if you translate what you're saying into everyday life in a city, I'm sitting in Jakarta, for example, you know, people need the tools that you're talking about, which are simply meditation, yoga, good nutrition, regular exercise, not necessarily crazy exercise, just walking. Nature is a part of the Santani journey.
Those are the standard things that we are thinking of. But when we are talking about human sustainability or preventative, and essentially what I mentioned was that when you take away the root causes, you're preventing diseases from happening.
Yeah.
So we are essentially in a process of changing the current curative medical practices into a preventative medical practices, because this curative system is not going to work when we have an issue like this, because curative practices come into play when you're already having some issues. Then it's too late because that is pulling you down. So it's not only about just the inputs. So what you were talking about, nutrition, meditation, things like that are all only inputs. But you have to actively manage the processing itself and the excretion system as well, output as well, where you actively take away the things. Like, so when you do a detox, we actually focuses on taking these things that are accumulating in the system away. Where these accumulations are the root causes. But coming back to the sustainability, yeah, so on the idea of human sustainability, it naturally transcends to everything else in our communities, in our environment, in everything we do, supply chains and all of that. And I mean, for examples on that from Santani, I think you know, about 95% of the wood that we have used is recycled. Right?
Yeah.
The flow we had is more than 100 years old, and we salvaged it from a tea factory that was being demolished, and we repurposed it and reused it. All the furniture is made out of wood that has been reclaimed from something else. Then the whole idea of not having air conditioning, right? Because in a tropical country like Jakarta, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Bali, but air conditioning takes for 70% of energy use. So to start off, Santani is about 70% better compared to any other hotel in this region from an environmental point of view. I mean, a lot of people talk of, when we talk about sustainability and environmental adherence and all of that, we focus on plastics and removing plastics or using solar to heat water and things like these are very superficial. What you need to really understand is the carbon footprint that you impart on this world. So for that, what really matters is energy use and use of sustainable use of materials. Because if you cut a tree, it's much worse than using plastic bottles to a certain extent. So using this kind of like recycling the wood, not having alternatives to air conditioning and things like that, and reducing the energy use. These are much more important from a sustainable point of view, or from a practical point of view as well for anyone to do.
And isn't the property sitting in a UNESCO site?
No, the property doesn't sit on a UNESCO site. It's at the foothills of a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Right, that's what I thought. Yes.
Yeah. So we are in the foothills, but we don't come into the protected area. Protected area is about 3,000 feet and above in that area, but we are at about 2,700 feet, so just below the protected area.
Beautiful. Santani is one of the most unique health retreats that I've been to, and I've been to a lot of them. Where did the concept come from? I mean, to be named as one of Time Magazine's top 100, destinations in the world is not a small achievement. And you had success very fast. Within 2 years, you went global, you went viral as a wellness. So talk us through how it all started.
The personal stories, I was in the US working in strategy consulting, working 16-hour days from airport lounges to desks all over the place. And I mean, if you know about consulting, special strategy consulting, it's a brutal work. So I was kind of seeking my own wellness, but it kind of, so the interesting one anecdote is like one day I called my father who was still in Sri Lanka, and I said like, look, I'm tired of this. I just can't keep up. I'm stressed. And he just basically told me, if are you talking about stress? What is that? You're a man up. He basically told me to man up and do your thing. That's what men are supposed to do.
Wow.
Right? That kind of got me thinking, because for him, stress was not a relevant thing. They never had stress. That was just, you do your work, that's it. So I was kind of going back to think, okay, is stress something of a pandemic of the new generation, our generation, or mental health? We all talk about mental health issues nowadays. It has become a pandemic. Is this a issue of our generation? And wasn't there mental health issues or stress in the previous generation? Because if you actually look at it, the way we are defining stress today, it wasn't there 30 years ago. I mean, I was still working 30 years ago. My first job was around 30 years ago. And we never had stress. The way this whole work-life balance and stress came into the vocabulary about 30 years ago.
If stress wasn't around 30 years ago, why is it around now?
Exactly. So that's what we started thinking, or I started thinking about. Whereas, as I said, the others created solutions because there was demand, stress is there. So I started, okay, wasn't stress there before? And no, there was stress. Actually, stress is the driving force of human evolution. Because stress, if you define stress, it's the point where you can't do something you have to do. And then you stress about it because you can't do what you have to do. And that's what actually drove human evolution, because we come to a point where the animals struggle to get something done. And one animal had a trait genetically happening because of a mutation or for whatever reason. And that animal was able to do that thing better than the other animals. And that animal progressed, right? So stress was actually the driving force. But the difference is, for 3 billion years in our evolution, up to being humans, all these stressors were physical. It was fight or flight, surviving, eating or getting eaten, right? So it was always physical. So we have in our system 3 billion years of genetic code to deal with stress in a physical manner, right? What happened about 30 years ago is the internet. And with the internet, what happened was there was an inflow of information coming at a pace that we never had. I mean, the day before the internet, you would wake up in the morning, maybe take a look at the paper for like 5 minutes, or look at the television news over breakfast, and you go. And then there was no emails coming, no WhatsApp coming, no TikToks and social media coming. You do your thing, you come back, that's it. That's the amount of information we had. But with the internet, there was overload or information, the pace of information coming to you became like exponentially higher than we have ever experienced in this 3 billion years. So
what you're saying is the internet is responsible for the human stress levels that globally in the Western world we've experienced for some 30 years.
Absolutely. That's the only change that happened about 30 years ago. Nothing else has changed. If you look at 3 billion years, I mean, it has evolved in a certain way. But over the last 30 years, where suddenly mental health became a pandemic and stress became a pandemic, the only change is the internet. And what happened with the internet is the pace of information coming to us. And we don't have a genetic code to manage that level of pace of information coming into us. So now we can't process what we have to process.
Yeah.
Because we never had that before. It was not a gradual build-up that happens with the physical evolution. It happened instantaneously. I mean, 3 billion years versus 30 years we are talking.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that really the best thing for humanity, putting aside economic evolution and development, is just to get rid of the internet and social media?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Because we can't fight evolution. This is still part of evolution. Now, if you go back in history, throughout evolution, we had these spikes. Like Ice Age is a spike that suddenly happened in evolution. Then what we call revolutions, agricultural revolution, industrial revolution, why we call them revolutions is, again, the pace of change was much, much faster than what it used to be. So we are just going through a evolutionary process, and I call it not the fourth industrial revolution. This is nothing to do with industry. This is an information revolution. This is a completely different thing to what industrial revolution was. Industrial revolution actually helped humans to slow down, because we didn't have to, like, all those stressors we had in finding food was taken away. We don't even have to walk anymore. There's a vehicle coming to us and picking us up. So it actually slowed down the evolutionary process. So this is nothing to do with industrial revolution. This is not fourth industrial revolution that we are going through. It's a completely new, much harder, a difficult situation because of information. But the point is, we can't ignore that. So what happened if you go back to, let's say, Ice Age? That's the easiest example. Like, dinosaurs was the top dog at that time in the world, right? And this sudden change happened.
Yeah.
And they couldn't adapt fast enough to that change.
Yeah.
And they vanished from the face of the earth, right? But they can't control what happens in this environment. I mean, so one issue is that we think as humans we can control what's happening. But even though this is our own creation, we have come to a point where we are not able to essentially control what's going on. And that is normal in evolutionary processes. It's the environment that changes. And we can't change the environment. The world is much bigger than us, right?
Yeah, I hear you. So what is the solution?
We have to get up to speed, right? So we were going like this. Suddenly the world is changing like this. We can't change this. We have to get up to speed, or we go off the cliff, right? So what Santani is all about is how to help humans to get up to speed. And in that process, there are two things. Obviously, the mental part, how to handle this overload of information coming to you, and how, and that in that process, it's always input, process, and output in anything we do, whether it's mental or physical. Like you take some food, you process that food and generate energy to live, and then in that process, you have to get rid of the waste, which is how heat resistance does. And that is also one of the key elements we do, because if that process doesn't work well, we have issues. That's essentially the root causes of diseases, as we know. Mentally also the same thing. We have inputs, stimulations coming in, like from an email, it's an input, or a WhatsApp message that you get is an input. And you need to process and make a decision and act, and then let everything else go away. But the thing is, now we are getting so much, we can't process everything. So there's a load that's still staying there. But through meditation and pranayama and things like that, you can actually help the mental part, how to clear up actively.
Yeah.
How to process actively, how to take in information actively, rather than passively just let everything just come over and overwhelm you. We help you to actively manage the input, process, and the output. Right? So that's one thing. But even more important is, when you're in a situation like this, if you have other conditions pulling you down, as I said, diseases, root cause, I mean, that's why I mentioned about the root causes. But let's say the whole idea is you to go up here, but you're diabetic, you have hypertension, you have something else that's pulling you down, then your ability to come up and get up to speed is diminished, right? And that's what COVID showed us as well. People who didn't make it were people who had, or people who were not fit,
right,
essentially, because they were old or because they had predisposed conditions.
Correct. What you're saying is very confronting. And, the two questions I have to ask you are, why is this the first time I've interviewed anyone that's talking about human sustainability, which makes complete sense? And secondly, what's the future of all this for humanity?
This is the future of humanity.
But where's it going to go? I mean, not everyone's going to come to Santani.
No. So how we have defined, now I'm talking more of a business model of Santani. Santani is the brand, but from a business model point of view, our whole game is about preventative healthcare. Preventative healthcare, because as I said, curative healthcare doesn't help when you have to deal with something like this. Before this, curative health, there was time. There was no other things that you need to focus on. So the whole idea is to change the world healthcare systems from a curative point of view to a preventative point of view. Right? So in that, we have two channels. The first channel is the resorts, wellness resorts, because that's brick and mortar, real feel, you get it. And you can do everything you can, but and it was a lab, as you said. And what we are doing and what I'm saying is controversial. No one has ever thought of it this way.
No.
So we had to prove because what I had was a hypothesis essentially at the beginning. So we had to actually show that this actually works.
Yeah.
So that's where we wanted to set up the resort as the first delivery channel. And it was almost like a lab for us.
Right.
And for the last 6 years, we have done it, and the results are tremendous from actual guest point of view. When you look at all the ratings versus the industry recognition and everything, because it works. So, but as you said, a lot of people. What's next is now we are taking this into which I call the scaling channel, where we can scale, because the need is global. Need is the biggest human need at this point. So we can't wait building hotels, which takes like 3 years to build, and it's expensive. So a lot of people can't access it. So what we are doing is we have a scaling channel where we are taking the whole concept digitally and deliver like almost 90% of it, except for actual massage that we do at Santani. We can deliver everything else digitally now. Like we are doing right now. I have to
stop you. There has to be an irony in the fact that you're delivering the health preventative program online, which was created by the stresses caused by the online world coming to fore.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Because as I said, you can't stop the evolution. This is the future.
Yeah.
Technology, data, internet. Now we are talking about metaverse. That's the future. So any solution that we create has to go with that.
How do you feel that medical science dovetails into the preventative medicine program that you're talking about?
Honestly, they don't. They just haven't. I mean, it might happen with the Western medical practices might go back in time and try to understand what's happening from Chinese traditional medicine to Ayurveda to shamanism and all of that. But what has happened is also for the last 30 years, because as I said, because the demand was so much, people just scrambled to put together a few things and call it wellness. So they have actually bastardized these ancient practices to a certain extent as well.
Yes.
They haven't understood the real science behind these ancient practices. And if you look at everything, at least from I don't know too much about Chinese medicine or shamanism, but from Ayurveda point of view, everything in Ayurveda is absolute backing of science. So for example, what it is all about, what the detox is, as I said, it's nothing to do with processed foods and chemicals in the processed foods. But the general understanding today is we have toxins because we eat this crap. And if you don't eat this processed foods and chemicals that we inhale and all of that, and go eat organic food, that we won't have these toxins coming to us.
Yeah.
Organic food is good, but that idea that by eating organic food that you're okay is a very, very, very dangerous situation, because organic food has nothing to do with toxins. Like if you look at Ayurveda, the Panchakarma, which is the detoxing protocol in Ayurveda. Ayurveda have multiple aspects to it, but this preventative component comes from Panchakarma, which is the detoxing protocol. Now, this happened like 3,000 to 5,000 years ago in Himalayas. 3 to 5,000 years ago in Himalayas, you had the best organic food possible, the best air possible, the best water possible. But they still came up with the protocol to detoxify you, cleanse you. So what were they detoxifying at that time if they were not taking any processed foods and chemicals? We didn't even know about hormones or chemicals at that time, right?
Yeah, so what was it?
It's the output in our system,
Yep.
right? So when you eat something, you break it down, and that breaking down process starts in your mouth. By chewing, you're breaking it down. Then it goes to the stomach, it gets other chemicals comes in and breaks it down further. And then some of it gets absorbed into the system and then goes through certain channels and blood to a cell. And in a cell, it gets even further broken down as metabolism, where oxygen is used to burn it. Burning means essentially breaking it down to extract the energy in a particular cell, on a particular compound, right? So there's a whole breaking down process. So when you break down certain things from like this to like an atom, there's a trail of waste, right? And that's that's toxins. These are not required in the body after that. They need to go out of the body and breathe. So carbon dioxide is a toxin and the body knows it. That's why we breathe it out. So with the first breath, when you're born, you start creating toxins. With the second breath, you detoxify. Every time you expel something from the body, which is breathing out, sweating, peeing, and pooing, you're detoxifying. That's why the body is pushing it out.
Yeah.
Right? So then the question is, if the body is doing this, why should someone come to Santani and spend like $700, $800 to do the same? Right?
And the answer?
Now, that's where Ayurveda really comes in, and this is where the science comes from in Ayurveda. So Ayurveda understood that this is a breaking down process and the body needs to get rid of the waste. But what happens is aging. Aging is the biggest issue. With aging, essentially what happens is you slow down. Why you slow down is because you have now used this system of breaking down as well as excretionary systems for like 30, 40 years. When you use a system for 30, 40 years, there's wear and tear in the systems. Now, in your car, every 6 months you go and service it for wear and tear because you replace the filters, you replace the oil. That is because there's wear and tear. But in our bodies now, we have used it for 30, 40 years, and we, like 99.99% of the world has not serviced it ever. So it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So what happens now, Ayurveda realized, okay, with aging, it means the body is now not functioning at 100% level. So around 30, 35, what happens is, let's say before that, you produce 100 units of this waste. That 100 units was efficiently put off out of the body.
Yeah.
But now what happens is your breaking down process itself slows down, so you don't break everything very well. So you start producing 110 units of waste. And instead of taking 100 units of waste out of the body, now the body can only take out 90 units. So it was 100 and 100. This went to 110. This came down to 90. So 20 units of this waste that should be out of the system is staying in the system.
Yeah.
And that completely screws up with your original balance that we had as young people.
Yeah.
And it starts accumulating.
Yes.
And when it starts accumulating, this process becomes even harder because now you have to fight all this. So then, I mean, these things happen at micro or nano level, but there's micro level accumulations from 30 to 50, 55.
Yeah.
And a snowballing effect has a big impact. And that's what diseases are about. That's why we get diseases at 45, 50 and not at 30, 25, 20, 30.
Yeah.
So there's a relationship between diseases and aging. So Ayurveda somehow figured this out and said, okay, now at around 30, 35, there comes a point where body can't do its function 100%. So we need to help the body to do its functions better. So, and the main focus there is now that you know certain things are accumulating in the body because a body can't put it out. I mean, body is still doing 99.9% of the job, but that's 0.01%. If you let it be for 20 years, it becomes a big thing. So let's address it right here when it starts accumulating. And through detoxing, you are taking away whatever that was accumulated. So I don't think Western medical practices have really understood this. They have, and to be fair, there's a lot of gimmicks as well in this whole wellness space. But as I said, our success has been, we have been able to cut through the BS and really focus
Fantastic.
on the science and understand what is Ayurveda, what is detoxing, what are toxins to start with, and deliver it.
Well, look, Vickum, it's so interesting. I could sit here talking to you all day, but unfortunately we're nearly out of time. And you said you're going to have an online program, but are there plans to open any more Santani wellness centers anywhere?
Yes, we are progressing on both. So there will be a global expansion of Santani resorts. We are right now, actually, I just had a call earlier with someone in Bali who wants to have a Santani there.
Brilliant.
I mean, yeah, we are talking with people in Seychelles for a project in Croatia, multiple places. And Sri Lanka itself has a lot more potential in this as well. But yeah, it's as I said, the need is global. The market for us is global. So the more global we are, we all win. I mean, we will win. Our guests will win from a healthcare point of view.
100%. And just before you go, how old or how young can someone be to come to Santani?
There's really no age limit. But as I said, ideally, the need arises around 30, 35.
Yeah.
That's when the aging process starts.
Mm-hmm.
So what we say is, and ideally, if you're like 32, around 40, 45, once a year doing a detox is enough.
Yeah.
But that is, again, if you don't have any other conditions. But if you have other conditions, you might need a little bit more intensive program where you need to do it more often. But after like 40, 45, doing it twice a year is good.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had a guest just 3 weeks ago. And when he came, he had an autoimmune disease where for over about 6 to 7 years, his platelet count was dropping for no reason. Like he didn't have, so that's why it became an autoimmune disease. So a typical, I think, platelet count should be about 140,000 to about 220,000. When he came to Santani 3 weeks ago, it was only 70,000.
Wow.
So it was half of the bottom level. And he was there only for 5 days, and we did a detox. And by the time he left, and he actually did a report. He went back, and first thing he did was take a report of his blood platelet count. It has gone up from 70 to 110,000. I mean, still not at the lower level of the average that you need to be, or the spectrum you need to be, but from 70 to 110,000 in 5 days.
5 days.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that was where he had an issue. But generally, I mean, until 30 to 45, I would say once a year is enough. After that, twice a year is the recommended thing. And look, people think, okay, I don't want to spend that much of money. But the fact is, if you get sick, the amount of economic impact of sickness is much, much more, because it's not about just a hospital bill. Your health is gone down, your contribution to your family, to your society, to your country, to humanity diminishes. 100%. And the economic impact of that is so much more. So it's much, much nicer to come to a place like Santani and actually enjoy the luxury and the pampering while getting healthier than wait and go to hospital.
Definitely. Well, Vickum, it's wonderful to speak to you. It's so exciting, this, evolution that you're making with Santani, but really the revolution you're making with health for people globally. And before you go, where to from here? I'm
right now in my apartment, but after this, I have hours time, I have meetings. So we are doing great stuff. You can't stop at this point.
It's absolutely fantastic. And I love Sri Lanka. I've traveled there many times, and with my children, I have friends there. It's a beautiful country. It's a lot of fun. And hopefully I'll see you there next time I come and visit. Yeah, please come see and come to Santani. And I know you stayed only like 3-4 days last time, but do a program. It's the biggest human need. You're part of it. You need to do it. Yeah. Absolutely. And spreading the message is really important. So thank you for coming on the show and sharing all of your insights, which are absolutely fantastic here today. Thanks so much. Thank you. Cheers. Bye. Okay. Good luck with your work. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe here and follow us on Instagram and Facebook for regular travel updates. You can also hear our episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.